Welcome to all of you to this global webinar. Good morning to many of you, and for those who are attending this global webcast from other parts of the world, a good afternoon or already a good evening. This global webcast is our next episode in our Bayer ForwardFarming initiative, because we are bound to launch our next Bayer Forward Farm, where we already have 24 of them operationally running in the world. And this will be a unique one, in a sense that this will be the first Bayer Forward Farm under glass, located in the Netherlands. That's one thing. And the second thing is that it will be a close cooperation with the currently existing expertise center for tomato production of the Ruiter, being the Ruiter Experience Center located in Bleiswijk, the Netherlands. I will be your host of today. My name is Jos Pauwels, working for Bayer Crop Science in the Netherlands as head of sales for crop protection and row crop seeds. And before I will move in further into the program, I would like to make you aware of the fact that you have given your legal consent already for the fact that this entire event will be recorded, which means that parts of it may be used by Bayer for internal or external communication purposes. But hopefully you will stay with us for the next 2.5 to 3 hours. Another thing I would like to share with you is that due to the fact that we have quite a strict program with many interesting presentations and discussions, we are going to try to answer all the questions that you may have. So please put them into the chat, but we do not have the ability to answer questions directly during the live presentations. For you, good to know maybe that I'm located at this moment at the Ruiter Experience Center in the Netherlands. What will you get today from us? You will get many insights on the business, on the grower, and everything, of course, will be related to sustainability. You will also hear a lot about the Bayer Forward Farming initiative and the objective that we have while having and running Bayer Forward Farms, which is all tied up to the sustainability journey of where Bayer Crop Science is in. You also will hear, of course, a lot about the Ruiter Experience Center, what it is, and how the connection and the collaboration will be together with the Bayer Forward Farming initiative. I would like to talk you briefly through the program. And the program has been sent to you all yesterday afternoon together with the link, so you may have seen it already. The program basically is split into 2 parts. A first part before a 15 minutes break that consists of many interesting presentations of, on one hand, Bayer employees, but on the other hand, also a few interesting external keynote speakers. After the break, we will move into a live panel discussion. A live panel discussion around 2 basic topics, being sustainability, innovation, and health. And we will kick off this live panel discussion with 3 presentations, and afterwards we will move into this panel discussion. This is basically the program for the next 2.5 to 3 hours, and I hope it will be of interest for you all. Having said that, I would like to move into the program, and that brings me to the introduction of our first speaker. Our first speaker will be Incy Dennenberg. Incy is working for Bayer Crop Science for many years already, and already for various years in the vegetable seeds area. By that, she has built up a great internal and external network and a broad expertise in crop science in particular, but also in vegetable seeds, and that is the reason that she is currently leading globally the vegetable seeds business. Incy is going to kick off this event, and she will speak around a few things. She will speak more or less also about the growing population on a global scale, the global demand for food production, which needs to be of quite high quality and good health, and produced in a sustainable way, and the challenge that we have with natural resources which are or not present, or we do not want to use them to do things in a sustainable way. That's one thing. But she will also speak about the importance of keep on promoting to consume fruit and vegetables by global society. With having said that, I would like to hit it over to Incy and give her the floor to share her insights. Thank you.
Hello, welcome. And thank you for joining us today to commemorate the official launch of the first ever Bayer Forward Farm under glass. While I wish we could be together in person at the state-of-the-art glass houses that make up the Brasender Nursery and the Ruiter Experience Center, I am equally excited about today's virtual event. I'd like to thank today's speakers, organizers, and all of our participants for joining us for what is sure to be a dynamic and insightful discussion. Before we dive into the rest of today's agenda, I'd first like to take a moment to reflect on what an important milestone and moment in time this is. As you might know, 2021 has been declared by the UN General Assembly as the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables. This designation is meant to raise awareness of, direct policy attention to, and share good practices and information about not only the health benefits of fresh produce, but also how we can work together to prevent and reduce loss and waste of fruits and vegetables around the world. Today, humanity consumes only a fraction of the vegetables they need. And frankly, the job of growing vegetables and getting them safely to the market has never been harder. At Bayer, we firmly believe in the power of partnership to grow healthier vegetables, healthier businesses, healthier supply chains, and a healthier world. Fueled by an endless pursuit of sustainable solutions that can help increase productivity while reducing resource consumption, we're partnering across the entire value chain to grow the industry and promote the consumption of fruits and vegetables. And we believe that dialogue and demonstration are crucial to increase transparency and enable our collective success. And so that brings me back to where we are today, a celebration of partnership and what's possible when we can work together with a common purpose to promote modern and sustainable cultivation. Over the next few hours, we'll hear firsthand from a variety of stakeholders about the future of glasshouse horticulture and tomato cultivation. I am very much looking forward to hearing from all of our speakers as well as from you. So, without further ado, let's get started.
Thanks, Insi, for kicking off this event and sharing your insights on what we are dealing with globally when it comes to a challenge of food production and the importance of it for the global population. Having kicked off this event with your presentation, we will move into our second speaker. And this will be an external speaker. This will be Paul Zandman, a grower. And that is the grower we collaborate with in our Bayer ForwardFarming initiative and where the Ruiter is working with together already for many years. Paul Zandman runs an own enterprise in tomato production and sweet peppers together with his companion, and he started that enterprise in 2001 under the name of Brazander. Paul Zandman is also responsible for running the daily-to-daily greenhouse operations in the Ruiter Experience Center, and by that also responsible for the tomato cultivation and the tomato production. Paul Zandman will share with us more insights on these greenhouse operations, on tomato cultivation and production, but especially on the efforts he does with his companion on the level of sustainability and of which he thinks is important to work on as a grower. So Paul, please come on in and share your view and insights with all the attendees.
Thank you, Jos. We're standing in the Ruiter Experience Center and also the first Bayer ForwardFarm under glass. I am Paul Zandman. I'm owner of Brazander Specialty Growers. We're located at 5 different locations and we are used to grow there tomatoes mostly and a little bit of bell peppers. Our partnership with the Ruiter goes back 10 years ago when they were looking for a location to do their tomato trials. Because of the success of this cooperation, they also asked if we want to build the new experience center for them in 2017. Through the Bayer ForwardFarm, we are able to tell the real story about the grower and show the best practice in growing. For us growers, sustainability is very important. Due to that, we use rest CO2 from the chemical industry. We are busy to get attached on a warm water network, and we install 450 solar panels on the roof. Besides that, we try to use as less chemicals as possible, make more use about biological solutions against pests. For us, the Bayer ForwardFarm is very important because it's been able to tell the story, the real story about growers. Also the story about the sustainability behind the growers.
Thank you, Paul, for sharing these insights. And I think it has become clear, at least for me, what the Tomato Experience Center is all about, the reason why it has been built, and what we do there, and especially also your role within the Experience Center. You also shared with us a few things on the level of sustainability, of which you think growers should work on, and where you are working on already together, yourself, together with your companion in your own enterprise, but also in the Experience Center. I think now it's good to show and to explain to all the attendees what the relation is between the Ruiter Experience Center on itself and the Bayer ForwardFarming initiative, and having Bayer Forward Farms on the other side. And we have a very good presenter who can really give this explanation in a good way. And that's Mark Snijders. Mark Snijders will be our next presenter. Mark Snijders is currently head of sustainable agriculture operations in the Belgium organization. And Mark has been with us within crop science for more than 20 years. Mark has been active in several roles and functions, and due to that, he has acquired a broad network, internal, within EMEA and even globally, and also have a very broad expertise in all kinds of disciplines. And a few years ago, when Bayer Crop Science really stepped into the sustainability journey, where we are still in, Mark strongly believed that he was able to deliver a contribution to that journey, and he started to specialize himself into sustainable agriculture. Mark will take us with us to explain more about what sustainability means for Bayer Crop Science, how this embeds in the Bayer Forward Farming initiative, why we have and how we use Bayer Forward Farms, and of course he will also speak more in detail how we see the upcoming cooperation together with the Ruiter Experience Center, so where we are going to combine sustainability on one side and expertise and innovation driven on the other side. Mark, an interesting insight maybe before we go to you, and that is something that needs to be mentioned, is that the first Bayer Forward Farm that we started up globally, we started up in Belgium, in Huldenberg near Brussels. And that was basically also one of the ideas of Mark itself. So it's very good to have you here live, Mark, in this webcast to explain more about the Bayer Forward Farming initiative. Now I would like to hand it over to you because I know you have a lot of interesting insights to share with us. Please go ahead. Good luck.
Thank you, Josh, for the kind introduction, and a very warm welcome to everyone in this meeting. I'm really pleased that I get today the opportunity to present to you the concept of Bayer Forward Farming. But before doing so, it's maybe good to give you a little bit more background about what I'm doing at Bayer. In fact, together with my colleague Christy in the Netherlands, I'm responsible for developing and implementing Bayer's sustainable agriculture strategy. Now, this is, of course, a very large scope. But if we focus on the main and the most important elements, it's about making sure that our products are used safely for people and for the environment. It's about looking at new technologies and innovation and to find out how these new technologies can help us to produce more with less, and therefore also more sustainably. And the third element, which is really important, is to look at stakeholder engagement, how we can fostering dialogue, how we can partner with different stakeholders in order to transform agriculture to a more sustainable model in order to benefit farmers, consumers, and the planet. Now, I suppose that most of you have some connection with farming or with food production, and therefore it's probably not surprising when I'm telling you that our sector is facing a lot of challenges. There is a lot of change, there is a lot of contest, there are many demands from different angles, but there are also a lot of opportunities. And I listed just a few here, a few challenges, a few opportunities. It's about growing more food on less land and with less inputs. It's about scarcity of natural resources. It's about exceeding planetary boundaries, especially if we look to biodiversity and climate change, but also about changing societal demands regarding sustainability and transparency. Also looking at farm economics, which are often not that brilliant today. We also see arriving a lot of new disruptive technologies on the market. Big data is also entering the agriculture sector, and therefore also new entrants, small startups or big established companies which get more and more interested in food production. And of course, we see also emerging some new business models. Think about carbon sequestration or nutraceuticals. Now, Bayer firmly believes that agriculture, sustainable agriculture, really can bring a solution to many of these challenges and also seize these new opportunities that are ahead of us. And therefore, we believe that we need to concentrate on sustainability, innovation, and dialogue. And that's exactly what we are doing in the Bayer ForwardFarming concept. In fact, we are testing, demonstrating, and sharing best practices and knowledge about sustainable solutions. We test these solutions on real operational farms in order to see how they fit in modern farming. And at the same time, we are also looking at increasing, fostering dialogue with the different stakeholders, because we believe it's really important to work together with different stakeholders on improving sustainability of food production. Now, I already mentioned that it's really important to do this on real operational farms with real farmers. Why? Because if you can show that things work in real life, it's much easier to roll them out. If you see how it's working, you also can believe in it. Very important also is that we base what we do on facts and figures, on research. It's not about an opinion here. And the third element, which I already mentioned a few times, the importance of partnerships with private and with public companies and organizations. And in that way, we try to find out how we can improve in practice sustainability at the farm. Now, if we talk about sustainability and you ask the different people what it means for them, often you will hear the argument of the environment, improving the conditions for the environment, looking at environmental responsibility. Now, this is also a very important element if you look to sustainability. But it's also important to take into account economic success and social responsibility. Because without economic success, if you want to develop a model, it's not possible to continue this in the long run. You need to have a profitability. And at the same time, you need also to have a social acceptance. This means that you have also to show what is the benefit for society. And if you have these three elements together, you can talk about sustainable agriculture. Now, how are we trying to build a more sustainable model for agriculture? Well, we try to combine different elements, and we are starting from 3 building blocks, which are present on almost every farm. It's water, soil, and biodiversity. And what we bring in as a company, it's knowledge, it's technology, but the one at the end of the day who's making farming sustainable, it's the farmer, it's the grower. It's really important to keep this in mind because that's where everything starts in order to come to a sustainable model in food production. Now, what we try to do at the Bayer Forward Farm, it's to integrate different solutions. There is no silver bullet to make agriculture sustainable. You have to look at different solutions and to integrate these different solutions. What we are doing is using the model for integrated pest management, which we are leveraging to integrated crop management and even integrated farm management. And there's 3 building blocks which are important for that. It's prevention, it's monitoring, and it's intervention. And with these 3 building blocks, we can integrate different solutions. And just to give you a few examples of solutions that we are taking into account, the first one, it's also the most natural one, it's nature. It's about functional biodiversity, it's about soil health, and looking how this can help us to make, for example, plants more healthier, more sustainable. We're also looking at breeding, because breeding can also help us to prevent diseases, to prevent protection against certain pests. And we are looking into cultivation, for example, soil cultivation, crop rotation, but also if you would think about glasshouses, about how we can adapt the growing medium in order to make plant more resistant against certain pests. The second block that we are looking into, it's the monitoring. It's the observation, it's looking how the crop is developing, and we get more and more new tools to do this that help us to do this in a better way. Think about multispectral cameras for soil and crop scans, but think also about the better possibility to analyze all this data and to find causal interactions between the different data that we are collecting at the farm or in the glasshouse. And with that, we can build new algorithms. We can give a better advice on when to use the products, how much to use, and where to use these products. We also can think about variable applications. So where we are going to adapt the application of a fertilizer or crop protection product specifically to the needs of a specific place in the field or a specific part of the glasshouse. And then we have the third block, which is about the interventions, where we can look at robotization, automation, also something which is already very advanced in glasshouses, looking at new developments in biological protection, looking at biostimulants, looking at biopesticides, also microbiologicals, and still working very hard on synthetic crop protection, where we are able to make our products ever more safer and specific. Now, Bayer is working in several areas. We are working on the breeding, we are working on the digitalization, on the monitoring, and we are working on the biological and synthetic crop protection products. But what we want to do more and more, it's to come to integrated solutions or tailored solutions. And therefore, we need to combine these different solutions that we have available in one farming system. Very important, of course, to make this happen, it's to test these solutions, to demonstrate them and to roll them out. And I will give you just a few examples of what we did at the Bayer Forward Farm near Brussels. This was the first Bayer Forward Farm which was created, which was installed. And we started back in 2011 looking at how we could improve water protection. And one of the elements that we introduced was the phytobag. Phytobag, it's a system, it's a closed system, which enables us to clean, to purify the restwater, the wastewater, which is existing after that we used crop protection products. This water is contaminated with this product, so we can't just dispose of it like that in the environment, of course. So therefore, we developed a system which is helping us to purify this restwater. And we could show that with this system, we can reduce the wastewater, contaminated water on a farm with more than 90%. At this moment, we don't have even any wastewater which is disposed of at the farm. What you see here, it's a phytobag which is used at an arable farm, so it's quite large, but we also have other models that we demonstrate for other farms which are maybe smaller and which need to clean less water. With this one here, we can clean about 25,000 liters of freshwater every year. Another element that we are looking at, it's erosion and prevention of erosion. In 2011, we set up a big project with University of Gembloux in order to look at the possibility to avoid erosion in potatoes. And what we tested was a system which is making cross borders between the large ridges where the potatoes are planted. And these small cross borders, they avoid that water is running off the slope and is causing erosion within the ridges of potatoes. Now, if we can prevent erosion, we are also going to prevent the runoff of fertilizers and crop protection products from the field, and therefore we can also protect surface water. So that's the ultimate goal. And we could show that with this system, we can reduce the erosion with more than 90% and also the runoff of fertilizers and crop protection products from the field with more than 90%. Now, it's not only about protecting the environment. With this system, we found also out that we are able to increase the yield of potatoes, because when we avoid the runoff of water and therefore also fertilizer and crop protection products, we can get to a better yield because water is spread more equally over the field. Also, fertilizers are staying on the place where they are applied, and you avoid these wet spots in the lower parts of the field where potatoes can be damaged because of excess in water and are not able anymore to be harvested. We found out that in general we can increase with this system yield with 3 to 5%, and this means that the installation costs to make these cross borders, it's paid back in less than 3 years. So with that and demonstrating this to farmers, we were able to convince farmers to use this system, and now we have an adoption rate of more than 80% on hilly fields in Belgium. And the last element which is important to mention in this context is that alongside the environmental benefit and the economic benefit, there is also a social benefit, because if we are now seeing used these cross borders on more than 80% of the hilly fields, you also avoid the mud streams during spring, during heavy thunderstorms. So there's also a social benefit to this technology. The third element that we have been developing at the farm, it's precision agriculture. And I suppose that most of you know about GPS spraying and section control. We applied this since 2014 on the farm, and we did some measurements with it. Like I said, we always try to base what we do on facts and figures. And here we found out that we can avoid about 40 hectares of overlap each year. The farm is spraying about 1,500 hectares every year, and we can reduce the overlap with about 4%. This means also savings in inputs with about 4%, but also exposure to the environment will be reduced if we can reduce the overlap. So also here we have an environmental benefit and we have an economic benefit, and therefore these kind of systems are quite fast adopted by the farmers. And then the last element I want to mention, it's biodiversity. If we talk about planetary boundaries, biodiversity, it's certainly one of the big challenges for the future. Now, what we try to show at the farm is how you can integrate productivity and biodiversity and make them complementary. This is a picture of the area around the farm. This is our farm here. And you can see that everywhere in the fields, we have different biodiversity measures. In fact, what we try to do is combine different measures which are supported by the Flemish government or by the European Common Agriculture payments, and we try them install in such a way that at the one hand they bring the benefit for biodiversity, but they bring also a benefit for productivity. With these purple zones, we are avoiding erosion. These are erosion strips. With the green zones here, we install nature conservation strips. You will see that they are at the one hand bordering the field and on the other hand bordering some woodland. So it's in fact a kind of buffer zone between the woodland, nature and the field. We are also applying mowing management in order to protect bird life. We are working with mixed hedges. You can see here, this is a pear orchard. We have a mixed hedge, which is installed in order to attract beneficial insects, which will help us to control dangerous pests in the pears at the one hand, but also is offering during the whole season flowering for feeding solitary bees. And this proves that you, in this kind of landscape, perfectly can combine biodiversity measurements with a high productivity. And then we come to the most, or one of the most important elements at the farm. It's the dialogue. It's demonstrating, it's showing all these activities, all these solutions that we put into practice, to show them to different stakeholders. This is really important to make people understand what is possible, but also what's not possible, what's not working. And at the same time, it's helping the farmers to test these different solutions in different conditions in order then to adopt them to the whole farming system. Now, in the meantime, the network of Bayer ForwardFarm has been growing, and we have now 24 farms in 12 countries over the world. The biggest part of the Bayer Forward farms are still situated in Europe, but you can also see on the map here that we have farms in Latin America, and we have also a farm in China, in Asia Pacific. This is really important if we look to the further development, the further rollout of the Bayer Forward farming concept, which we, and this I want to stress particularly, which we can only do with the help of farmers. It's in fact the farmers who play a key role in this concept, who are testing not only the solutions in practical conditions, but also are helping us with the communication, with the dialogue with different stakeholders. If you can work together with farmers, with growers, and bring your story, bring your solutions to the different stakeholders, the credibility of what you do, it's increasing very much. So we were able, together with these farmers in the last 10 years, to welcome more than 34,000 visitors on our farms. And therefore, we are also so happy that we now have this cooperation with the Ruiter Experience Center, because we didn't have yet a glass house in our network. And as this is a really important element in sustainable food production, we believe we should have also this kind of production system in our network. Now, it's clear that with the Ruiter Experience Center, we have already a lot of experience and a strong focus on seed and agronomic technology. But what we want to do is to use this knowledge, to use this focus to also include sustainability and look on how we can improve with this agronomic technology also the sustainability of glasshouse growing. And we have different elements that we can look into. We can look into the cultivation media, into the irrigation, into the fertilization, or we can look into regulation of climate, CO2, light management, looking into recycling, waste management, but also looking into consumer benefits. Second element that we will be looking at is crop protection and how we can safely use these products within glasshouses. We will also combine new technologies like digitalization in order to evaluate breeding technologies to improve seed quality, hygiene, and treatment of the glasshouse. And very important is also to look at different partnerships, looking at tracking and tracing, which is really important for transparency, and also looking at outdoor biodiversity measures that we can take in the surroundings of the glasshouse. So with that, I come to the end of my presentation, and I would like to thank you for your kind attention. I hope that this presentation gave you a little flavor of how Bayer Forward Farms work. And of course, a virtual visit or explanation can't compete with the real stuff. So I hope that we can welcome you sometime in the near future live at one of our Forward Farms. And with that, I hand over back to our moderator, Jos. Enjoy the rest of the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I can only speak for myself, I guess, but with all the insights that you shared on sustainability and the vision on sustainability by Bayer Crop Science, I think you gave a very good overview on what we think sustainability is in relation to agriculture and horticulture, and what we think we are able to work on and where we should work on. And you also already made a very good connection with the Bayer Forward Farming initiative, what the objective is for ourselves with the Bayer Forward Farming initiative and how the different Bayer Forward farms fit into it. So you mentioned all kinds of things related to research, demonstration, discussion and dialogue that we have on our Bayer Forward farms, etc. So that was a very good insights, and especially sharing a lot of great practical examples of things that we are doing already today on the Bayer Forward farms in outdoor crops. I think is a perfect basis to step into the cooperation with the Ruiter in the Experience Center, also to continue our Bayer Forward Farming initiative episode under glass. So thanks, Mark, for sharing this information. What I think is important is, and that was already in the beginning of your presentation, is that you shared that sustainability has basically three pillars: environmental, societal, but also economics. So you only can run a sustainable business on every level, starting with the grower, if also the economics are okay. And that is something I would like to use to make the bridge to our next presenter. And that's Joost van Rechteren. Joost van Rechteren is working already for many years within crop science, has built up a great expertise in vegetable seeds and technology development in particular, and is currently head of market development within the vegetable seeds area for EMEA and Asia Pacific. Joost will share with us how the Ruiter is running today and the perspective that the Ruiter has towards the future. And which I mean the perspective that the Ruiter has is developing and offering solutions to the grower in the end to make sure that also the grower, our final customer, has the ability to run a profitable and at the same time sustainable business. So also, I would like to hand it over to Joost now, and Joost will specifically mention also the role that we as Bayer Crop Science want to play on the level of the grower, and also will mention what we can add to the grower's business. Joost, I will leave it up to you. Please come on in and share your insights. Thank you.
My name is Joost van Rechteren, Joost van Rechteren. I'm leading market development for biovegetable seeds for the regions EMEA and APAC. Market development stands for the technical or commercial technical bridge between R&D, the breeding, and sales, the customer, the market, making sure that we make the right selections to develop our new products and really making sure that we enter the market with the right material for our consumers, for our customers. I'm going to take you on a journey, on a short journey of our biovegetables business. And it starts with, of course, the fact that fruits and vegetables are an essential part of our diets, or it should be an essential part of our diets. Especially now, knowing that the world population is growing at high speed. We also know that it's recommended to eat at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. And unfortunately, we also know that it's not always possible for people to eat those 5 servings. On the other side, there are so many people as well that don't want to eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day, or they don't know that they have to keep a healthy diet. I'm really happy to share that our purpose at Bayer Vegetable Seeds is in fact to deliver better life through health and nutrition. So I think it plays really well into that. We are dedicated to develop new vegetable seed varieties that growers around the world can cultivate into quality, nutritious produce. We have 4 focus segments that we deliver our products to. That is protected, greenhouse and glasshouse, that is open field, processing and smallholders. So protected, open field, processing and smallholders. Each of those segments, of course, has its own dynamic, its own needs, its own approaches, and that makes it for us very, very important to really focus on those 4 segments because there's so much dynamic in this business. We operate globally. We have around 2,600 people working at Bayer Vegetable Seeds, and they all are working hard to develop innovative products. Today, we deliver around 2,000 commercial seed varieties spanning 22 crops globally. And those crops vary from tomato, glasshouse tomato, ketchup tomatoes, but also carrots, onions, broccoli, watermelon, etc. And these consumers, if you eat a vegetable, most likely one of them will be ours. And I think that's the role we want to play. We want to play a role in healthy diets. As mentioned, we operate globally in the 4 areas of the world: North America, South America, Europe, Middle East and Africa, and Asia Pacific. But on top of delivering those seed varieties to those markets, we also want to create even more value for growers. And we want to do that through what we call tailored solutions that are meant to offer grower-centric services. And you have to think about tailored solutions, grower-centric services in the light of advice, so more irrigation strategy advice or density advice for our customers. One of these services, in fact, is the Ruiter Experience Center, where we demonstrate our commercial and pre-commercial varieties in real-time growing conditions. At the time, it was a really conscious decision to not do it ourselves, but to partner with innovative growers in this concept, Brasander. We wanted really to get the best possible practical experience and not just show our produce, but also how it's grown. And looking now where we are and at the number of visitors we've seen in the last couple of years, I'm very, very happy we made that decision. And it's proven to be working really well. From the moment we became Bayer Vegetable Seeds, we thought that our Experience Center, combined with the partner Brasander and the Bayer ForwardFarm concept, would be a perfect match. Because on one side we have the crop and the production of the crop, and on the other side we have, let's say, the story of the grower, the focus on sustainability, the kind of well-rounded messaging, and together I think they match well. We have a perfect story to tell, and we're proud of that story to tell. We believe that it's important to demonstrate the entire process of developing and producing seeds to fruits in a transparent way, and highlight the opportunities, especially for sustainable horticulture, which is a big topic for us. The combined approach helps us to enter the dialogue and to reach more people with our story and the story of the industry, including consumers. Consumers are asking more and more and more about the products they eat and are becoming more aware of the importance of a healthy diet, especially in the more developing areas. When the economy is growing, people are becoming more aware. We also see that there's a growing demand for convenient vegetables. For instance, our snacking tomatoes, and a higher quality product with, for instance, a longer shelf life at the retailer, during logistics, but also at the consumer in the kitchen. We want to have an impact on reducing food waste when it comes to vegetables. Food and producing food is so close to people's heart that we believe more transparency is important to educate consumers how their food is grown. Food is emotion. For example, I believe it's very interesting to understand how growers, farmers are recirculating the water they use without wasting it. I'm pretty sure not all consumers know about that. It's also interesting to hear the grower talk about their carbon footprint and how they think about sustainable horticulture and their focus on, for example, biological crop control. I think pretty interesting aspects of a story that consumers are not aware of. It's good to know, and if you want to know more about your food, how your food is grown, I think this will help to get that appreciation, to create that awareness. In our Experience Center, we want to explain, amongst many other things, the journey of the seed, addressing what it takes to develop the seeds, to produce the seeds, etc., etc. And this journey takes, it varies by crop, but it takes quite some time. For tomato, for example, it takes on an average 7 years to develop a new variety that is ready to go to market, if all goes well. There's the crossings that the breeders need to make, the selections that need to be made, the testing and the field trials. And after all of those efforts, we go from really thousands and thousands of varieties in those 7 years to just one variety that we enter the market with, a variety introduction. A long and complex journey where data, for instance, is critical, where digital is becoming much, much more critical for us. Those insights, those algorithms that we can build along the journey help us to make better decisions, to make better data-driven decisions. But also, we need to leverage that data and turn it into knowledge. Knowledge for us to communicate back internally, so what are the right decisions to make, but also knowledge that we can use to transfer to our customers. How can they know better and sooner about the genetic potential we offer to them? How can they maximize that genetic potential quicker? On the other side, we also need to know what consumers need, what the market trends are. How can we keep on, let's say, innovating enough? How can we make sure that our products continue to meet or exceed their expectations? Bayer is a research-driven company. Every year, we are investing around 15% of our revenue into R&D to develop these innovative products and solutions. Vegetables is dynamic. It's important for us to keep on improving new varieties with better disease resistance, higher yield potential, lower energy impact, increased labor efficiencies, for instance, as grower traits, but also consumer traits like taste, color, size, shape, etc. So there's a big list of traits, we call it, that we need to continuously improve on. And because we're operating in a highly competitive landscape, we need to safeguard our investments by protecting the R&D outcome against others that want to copy without having this high cost and high risk. If you're investing this much money in R&D, I think everybody will understand it's normal that certain protection of that intellectual property is essential. The current patent system, for example, is really a precondition for the development of innovative products. It creates the necessary incentives through a temporary protection for the inventor, us as a seed company. So innovations can keep on coming, which is really what the market and the consumer is asking from us. Another area of interest is the food chain in its totality. It's good that we are making steps in our discussion with them to secure there's enough attention to sustainability, to quality and product recognition. Consumers would like to know what they're buying, what they're eating, and if they like it, they want to be able to buy it again, which is not always possible in fresh foods like vegetables and fruit. The link between recognizing quality and their experience. So with our food chain partners, we can generate those insights and we can help to offer the best choices for the consumer and that they recognize what they're eating and what they're buying. Kind of a branding of fruits and vegetables. Especially in fresh vegetables, we are still seeing that there are things to improve on. And what's close to my heart is food waste, for example. I think, we believe it should be higher on the agenda. Fresh fruits and vegetables play a significant role in reducing food waste. And if you have that on your agenda, you need to, let's say, control the chain from A to B to Z, C, etc. There are many steps we can take to reduce that food waste. And I think as a seed company, we play a role there. So I would like to wrap it up. And I would like to share with you a few of our fresh innovations that we have brought to market recently. One of them is a snacking tomato variety where the fruits stay on the truss better, longer, so that they don't fall off during their shelf life. Not during transport, not at the retailer, at the supermarket, but also not in your kitchen. This significantly reduces the food waste. It does improve that consumer experience, and in fact it tastes incredible. That's all about that experience. If the fruit stays on the truss longer, you feel that it's fresh. If it falls off, it doesn't appeal as much to the consumer. We found that out. Of course, this is supported by our consumer panels, the data that we collect along the way. Some time ago, actually, I had a nice consumer panel test where I was able to offer this variety to the Dutch Minister of Agriculture at the time. And she tasted it and she really liked it. She didn't only like the taste of it, but she really liked the no waste concept as well. So that's about that consumer feedback that we appreciate. Another example I want to bring is, again, connected to consumer liking and that feedback we want to get from the market, which is, again, a very important objective for us, is the new feature on a more mainstream tomato. And we call that internal red. If you cut this tomato, it's red. It's very appealing, it's attracting the eye, and it looks tasty before you even have tasted it. That's the experience you want to create. It's very visible, and it's very different from what's out there in the supermarkets currently. So we want to make that differentiation. We want to really improve on that experience by continuing to innovate our portfolio. So please come and see and taste for yourself in our Ruiter Experience Center and have the dialogue with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Joost, for sharing such interesting insights with us. I think you clearly explained what Bayer Vegetable Seeds is doing today with the brands Seminis and the Ruiter in particular. Also that we are trying to continuously monitor market trends, and that we are trying to work on these market trends, and especially that we are trying continuously to meet all the demands that we see of the entire value chain, starting with the grower, so that we are continuously trying to develop solutions that add value today and tomorrow to the business of, first of all, our first customers and growers. Thanks for sharing these insights, and for the sake of time, I would like to switch to the last, but for sure not the least, presentation before we go into the 15 minutes bio break. And this will be a keynote external speaker. His name is Sjaak van der Tak. Sjaak has a lot of experience in local and national politics, also a lot of experience in horticulture. He has been the former major of the municipality Westland, which is an important region for a lot of greenhouse enterprises. He also has been the former president of the Dutch National Growers Association for Indoor Cropping, and today he is the president of the Dutch National Association for Agriculture and Horticultural Growers. Sjaak will explain us especially why it's so important that growers continuously keep on defending their license to produce in an environment where there's an increasing criticism and concerns about activities being done by agriculture and horticulture, but also with a lot of policies that become more stringent day by day. Be aware of the fact, and especially for the Bayer colleagues, that Sjaak van der Tak will also do a sort of outreach to research and development companies like Bayer Crop Science on what growers, in this case, via an association, expect from companies like us. So there's also a message in this presentation for us to work on. Sjaak, I would like to hand it over to you, and we are very happy to have you here on this global webinar. Please share your insights with us. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Jos. My name is Sjaak van der Tak. Since the 1st of January of this year, I am the president of the Dutch Organization for Agriculture and Horticulture, LTO Nederland. I'm thankful to be invited as a keynote speaker for today's digital event. Also, I would like to congratulate the Ruiter Seeds with their Experience Center joining the worldwide Bayer ForwardFarm network. As mentioned in my introduction, before my current role as president of LTO Nederland, I have been the president of Glastuinbouw Nederland, the organization of the Dutch greenhouses and the greenhouse horticulture industry, an innovative and progressive industry with a big focus on responsibility and sustainability. I would like to stress the importance of innovation in the agriculture and horticulture. Our sector has evolved and developed to its current status thanks to the introduction of the new varieties, technologies and cultivation systems. A lot of innovation and further development of cultivation systems is already taking place on the farm. Farmers and growers are really working on making their cultivation more sustainable. For example, we see growers that reduce their use of substances by more than 20% by means of smart adjustments to the sprayer. On farmers who sow their field margins with flour mixtures so that they fight against insect pesticides in a natural way. Especially the role of breeding is very important for an innovative and sustainable way of working. The Netherlands is internationally well known and recognized for its cultivations of high standards. Dutch growers produce for a worldwide market. The Netherlands is the second agriculture exporter in the world, with floriculture, fruit and vegetables as major export products. And this is only possible because of a very strong breeding sector. Because everything starts with high standard and healthy base material. As a sector, we are very proud of the knowledge and human capital that we have in the Netherlands in this area. But we also see challenges for future. We see that more options for protecting crops are disappearing without good and affordable alternatives being offered. It is becoming increasingly difficult for agriculture entrepreneurs to grow a healthy and profitable crop due to, among other things, decreasing possibility to use specific resources and an increase in environmental and market requirements. Society is asking more of us. Offering nice and cheap products is no longer enough. A license to produce is getting more and more important. We see that growers are moving towards a more sustainable way of working. For example, by becoming less dependent on chemical means or by anticipating on the changing of climate. This also means that the requirements for the base material are changing too. There's a big need for resilient breeds. Breeds that can withstand changing environments and that have a good tolerance for illnesses and plagues. Dutch agriculture and horticulture is faced with the task of organizing vegetable production in such a way that not only the plant but also the environment remains healthy. That is not easy in a market with high product costs and fierce international price competition. That task is therefore not only a technical issue, there are also challenges in the market and society. This requires investments and commitment from the sector, but also from the government and other parties. With other parties, we are working through a program on the transition to this sustainable and future-proof sector. To make sure the Dutch horticulture sector will stay the leading party in the cultivation of healthy and safe food and floriculture products in 2030. As an organization, we stress that in the way to this transition, it is also important that short-term problems should be solved and that the economic perspective for growers is of big importance. We see also a role for the crop protection industry because the use of chemistry will remain to be necessary in the future. This is why we ask commitment from the industry to push for the development and approval of low-risk productions in large and small crops. Also, working together with the industry and technology to come up with innovative solutions will help in applying crop protection as effectively and efficiently as possible. But also, we believe that the breeding sector has the key to help the horticulture to meet major global societal challenges that we are facing, such as reducing hunger and poverty and limiting consequences of climate change. Its growers want to profit from that innovation power in the most valuable way. Maintaining from access to genetic material is crucial. Every grower should be able to access the genetic diversity that nature has to offer, regardless of the technique used to create a new variety. Our ambition as an organization and sector is to internationally remain the frontrunner in food and floriculture. Our plan towards 2030 is to acquire this by focusing on the healthy plants that are resilient and growing in a system that hardly needs any adjustments. A healthy environment to which crop protection contributes in a positive way for humans, animals and environment. And a healthy market where the Dutch plant products are nationally and internationally well known and recognized as a brand. As a European level playing field. Of course, let me finish today by expressing my appreciation to the organization for inviting me to be one of the speakers of today's event. I wish you all a pleasant continuation of the morning and the rest of the day. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Sjaak, for sharing your insights regarding the topic, the importance of defending the license to produce by growers, both in agriculture and in horticulture. For me, you made very much clear that there's one thing that growers really need to be able to defend their license to produce today and tomorrow to the broader society, and that's innovation. Innovation to implement, to make sure that they can show steps. And for us, I think that is very important because that means that we are in the right direction and that we are, as a research and development company, well positioned to do so, with our focus on developing new solutions in the area of seeds, crop protection, specifically in the biological area, but also by trying to develop all kinds of digital solutions, which we can use to get the best out of seeds and out of crop protection by having a minimum impact on the environment on the other side. So that is for us a clear go to move on in that same direction. Thanks for being with us here, and also thanks for all the other presenters that we had until now before the break, because that is where we are bound to move into. For those who are not able to stay with us after the break, thanks for showing your interest and being with us. After the break, we will continue with, as promised, with a live panel discussion. This live panel discussion will be around 3 key topics. That will be innovation, sustainability, and health. And we will kick off this live panel discussion with 3 external keynote speakers who will shortly present in the form of a sort of pitch to show their opinion and their view on these 3 topics. Afterwards, we will have the discussion. We will have a professional banker who will speak about innovation. We have a former head of sustainability of the accountancy company PricewaterhouseCoopers who will speak about sustainability. And we will have a professor currently educating retail marketing at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands who will speak more about health. So there's more to come. For now, enjoy your well-deserved 15 minutes break. and we will continue at 10:25 sharp. Thank you. Hello, welcome back again for most of you who also joined the first part of this global webcast before the break. And a very warm welcome to those who were not able to join earlier but now stepped in this event. An event which is around our next episode on our Bayer ForwardFarming initiative, where we are bound to launch our next and 25th Bayer Forward Farm that we globally run together with growers. At first, Bayer Forward Farm under glass, with a close cooperation with the currently existing and expertise and technology-driven Ruiter Experience Center for tomato cultivation and tomato production. We received already very interesting insights on the level of business and the grower and the market from several Bayer colleagues, but also from interesting external keynote speakers before the break. And as promised, we would move into a live panel discussion after the break. And we are first going to kick it off. But before I will introduce you to the different keynote speakers that we will have for this live panel discussion, I would like to remind you and invite you to put all your remarks and burning questions into the chat, because those questions we will use to lively feed them into the panel discussion after we have the three presentations. Three presentations around three key topics, being innovation, sustainability, and health. And we will start with the topic of innovation. And for innovation, we invited Jan de Ruiter. Jan is a professional banker and working at one of the Dutch national biggest banks, who is also pretty much active in agriculture and horticulture. Jan de Ruiter has a very broad expertise, not only of being active nationally in the Netherlands, but also due to many years of service internationally. One of these countries was also New Zealand. Jan, together with his bank, is focusing on growers who purely believe in that innovation is needed today and tomorrow to drive a profitable and sustainable business from a grower's perspective, in the end to meet demands of the markets and the final consumer. Jan de Ruiter is focusing himself especially on entrepreneurial growers. Jan will now take us with us in his opinion why innovation is so important and what the key enablers and drivers are in innovation. So please, Jan, step in. We are very happy to have you here and share your insights from the perspective of banking and financing. Thank you. I think you're still muted.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Jos, for this introduction and for the invitation. All the people from Bayer and the Ruiter Seeds would like to thank you. And I also want to congratulate Bayer ForwardFarming and the Ruiter Experience Center in their cooperation, because I think that sharing knowledge will always be the foundation of improving agriculture. And I think this is a great example of how these two parts of your company will share this knowledge and get a lot of growers and farmers visit at your facilities and sharing culture. Yeah, it was quite funny this morning when I heard a lot of times my name mentioned as the Ruiter, and it was also funny to see that it's possible to have a trademark on your last name. That's what the Ruiter does. So, yes, it's. But I'm from a different branch of the family tree, I guess. So I'm Jan de Ruiter from ABN AMRO. I'm a sector banker responsible for horticulture and arable farming. Now, what Jos also mentioned, I have experience in financial service for more than 30 years, especially in horticulture. And we, from my job, I look at all the developments and trends in agriculture from genetics to consumers. And we share this knowledge internally, but also externally with reports and with presentations. And we mostly look at innovation and sustainability. And I was very privileged to have spent some years in my working career in New Zealand, and I did also some great missions from Agiterra. So I saw a lot of different farming systems all over the world. And that's also very important to share with other people in the world and within our company. And I put in, I had a picture of the famous All Blacks because I was in New Zealand when the world champion of rugby was there in 2011, and I very appreciate rugby and I like to watch it a lot. But one of the things I mentioned is that I think it's one of the sports with the highest innovation grade in the world. And for one example, when you see the referee, he uses on his chest a camera and a microphone, so there are no bad language or comments from players to the referee. So that would be also a great innovation for soccer, I guess. Another slide. So I will take you in a short pitch about the drivers for innovation in horticulture. I will have a short mention about the innovations in the food supply, on labor, on health, sustainability, and investments. And one of the things we saw, we did a lot of investments in and a lot of how do you say we talked to a lot of people and businesses in the food supply chain, and one of the main drivers, I guess, is the growing world population. And we also talk a lot about the affordability of food. There's a large part of populations in the world, but also in the Netherlands or in Europe, who need affordable food. It's also on the agenda right now with the increasing grain prices. And another important thing, I would guess, is one of the drivers is to, it was already mentioned earlier, but it's to have less food waste, because almost 30 to 40% of all the food in the world is wasted on the production side, but also in the retail and on consumer side. And we think that there are coming a lot of new innovations on that side too. Another thing could be a great driver for innovation is climate change. There is an interesting report a couple of years ago from the European Environment Agency about the food supply in Europe. And what they said is, for instance, like the climate change in the southern part of Europe will be a large driver for innovation, but also get the northern part of Europe a lot more important for food production. So it would be harder to produce all vegetables and fruits in the southern parts of Europe because of climate change. Another driver is, for instance, track and trace. We think there will be a lot of new innovations like blockchain and other new ways of communication to have a better way of to find out for consumers where the products are produced and how they are produced on a lot of different ways, like environmental, but also on labor and health issues. We saw, like with the COVID crisis, that labor is a big problem to get the availability of labor in this part of Europe, but also the costs of labor and also the working conditions like housing and a livable wage, transportation of labor. So it would be a lot of new technologies, and robotization will come in, we think, for on the labor side. Health, already mentioned before in different presentations. We see the health price increasing. It's quite hard. We have a lot of diseases, metabolic diseases, where we think the diet and the things what you eat is very important. So the fighting diseases of obesitas or like diabetes type 2 will be very important with one of the drivers in the food and vegetables, we think. And also quite interesting with new technologies and the new sensoring techniques and new apps and innovations on that side with personal nutrition. So we get more information from our personal side, how we live, what we eat, what our health situation is. It will be start maybe with lifestyle, could be with your DNA profile, and have some very specific nutrition advice on your personal situation. Sustainability, yeah, we see a lot of energy is used in glasshouse situations right now. So we think that still will be a big driver for innovations on that side. We see good initiatives like Casas Ene Sibren in the Netherlands, where you can use a glass house as a source of energy, but also a lot of environmental issues like the use of chemicals, water pollution, and all that kind of stuff that will be very interesting for a lot of parties in this area to have more innovations on that side and have a better or less environmental impact. You see, like the farm to fork strategy from Frans Timmermans in Europe, with the aim of 20% less fertilizer and 50% less antibiotics, and an average area of 25% of biological products. So yeah, that would drive a lot of new energy and for instance also maybe subsidies or money from Europe to have some innovation on that too. And what we see, we also think that a driver is the investments. There is a lot of money already available in the world, and so we see a lot of investments going to novel farming systems already. There's a very interesting organization, AgFunder, who reports every year or every half year a new report on investments in agriculture, and you see already that the novel farming systems will come up in investments from private equity companies, and so that's also a driver. There is a lot of money, like what you see already in artificial meat. You see innovative food coming up, like insects, seaweed, algae. So also that will be a large driver for innovation, we guess. And like we said, companies with a good story will have a good story to tell, but not really have the revenues. But they when you go out and meet some of those investment funds or private equity funds, you will see that there is a lot of money for new systems and new ways to produce food. Also high in innovation and also high on sustainability and less environmental impact. So that was a short short line out for us from us on the drivers of innovation. And it was a very short time to get you through it, but this is what I would like to have, and maybe we could share some discussion in the panel within a few minutes. Thank you very much, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jan. So you gave us a lot of interesting insights and things to think of, I guess, at least if I speak for myself. So I think we will receive some interesting questions in the minutes to come in the chat, and hopefully also the other two presenters will be inspired by your presentation to have later on a discussion about it. But before we do that, we will first move into our next presenter, who will present the topic sustainability, and that's Jan-Willem van der Beukel. Jan-Willem van der Beukel has been the former head of sustainability of the well-known international company PricewaterhouseCoopers. So he has quite a good view on, from that discipline, seen on what sustainability means. And currently he is active as alderman in the municipality Lansingerland. And that's the municipality where also the Ruiter Experience Center is located, as well as many other greenhouse operations. Willem van der Beuken is really positive about innovation and sustainability and the need for horticulture and indoor cropping in particular. And that's also the reason why we are in dialogue with him already for quite a while as being crop science, and particularly the Ruiter via the Ruiter Experience Center. Willem will now share with us his opinion on the importance of sustainability and especially the sustainability challenges he sees, especially for greenhouse and indoor cropping in particular in the area where he is active as alderman. So Willem, please be welcome also for you. Happy to have you here and looking forward to the pitch you will give us around sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Jos. And thanks, Nick, for having me as well. Expressing my gratitude to the whole of the Bayer company and especially to the people on the ground in Lansingerland. Indeed, we are in dialogue. We have been in dialogue for quite a while now. The evidence is my background panel, my background picture. I was lucky enough to be able to visit the Ruiter Experience Center a while ago, before we got into this latest lockdown. So it's a pleasure again to be with you. I have 3 talking points after some personal introduction. First is on the history of Greenport horticulture activities in Lansingerland. Secondly, on the future, and I'll close off with what we see as the role of government in this theme of innovation-driven sustainability. Now, kicking off with a short introduction of myself, you gave away some hints indeed already. Apart from being a professional, I'm also a married father, father of 4 kids, living in Berkel en Roderijs in Lansingerland, and also the grandchild of a migrant worker who migrated from Friesland. So that would now not really be called a migrant worker, I think, these days, but it used to be quite distant from Lansingerland. It's north of the Netherlands, to work in horticulture, because around 100 years ago, the sector was booming as well in this region of Lansingerland, say Western Holland, and there was a lot of unemployment in Friesland. So I also have quite a personal legacy with horticulture. Since February last year, indeed, I've been the alderman responsible for Greenport and horticulture in Lansingerland, and that's quite an important responsibility, I find, because horticulture is very, very important to our municipality. It accounts for 30% of all our economic activity. And more than a third of all jobs are related to horticulture. And that is greenhouse building, greenhouse construction, primary production, but it's also a lot of research and development, as in the case of yourselves. So the sector is very important and has been, as I tried to illustrate just now, has been important over the last 100 years or more than 100 years for the region and for our municipality. Now, probably not a surprise to the Dutch part of the audience that there's a lot of spatial pressure on this region. People say we need 1 million more houses, especially in the Randstad, where Lansingerland is located. So it's not self-evident that the spatial claim of horticulture, which is, as we know, still a very efficient way to grow crops, but still it requires space. It's not self-evident that there is a future for horticulture in this part of the Netherlands, because there's competing claims as well from housing, from industry, infrastructure, you name it. Nonetheless, we have chosen as a municipality, as a government in this part of the country, to continue this legacy and to protect and grow and nurture the sector also for the next century. Of course, it's not up to us in the end. It's up to entrepreneurs like yourselves to make that happen. But there is a role also for us because we're responsible for spatial planning. Now, why do we think it's important for the next century as well to be the home of horti-science, as we like to say? We think that's because the horticulture sector delivers on the SDGs, on Sustainable Development Goals, and can deliver even more and needs to deliver even more on the Sustainable Development Goals, mostly on 3, and that's where the sustainability agenda also comes from and relates to. Firstly, of course, horticulture already delivers and can deliver even more on the Sustainable Development Goal of zero hunger. I won't elaborate on that. I think it's rather self-evident. Secondly, horticulture can deliver and can deliver even more on decent work and economic growth. Even though there's robotization, like Jan de Ruiter just mentioned, still there's a lot of labor involved as well, and that's great because that gives people the opportunity to earn a living wage. And thirdly, and finally, when it comes to the Sustainable Development Goals, the sector can deliver and can deliver even more, and should deliver even more on responsible production and consumption. In essence, I think the norm that we are working towards is circular horticulture. Circular when it comes to water, circular when it comes to materials, and circular when it comes to energy. And indeed, it's not the key topic of today. The fossil nature, the relatively fossil nature of this industry is, I think, the most pressing challenge facing the sector right now. We need to tackle that as a community because otherwise we run the risk, as I see it, of a flip in the perception of the sector, a flip from being perceived as a green sector, as a green tech, towards a perception rather the opposite, namely being a fossil sector that we need to get rid of. We want to avoid that, and we can avoid that because there's ample opportunity and lots of technologies available to be more energy efficient and also to replace fossil energy for renewable energy. But we need to make it happen. We need to make it happen fast. So that's the sustainability agenda on which the sector delivers and can deliver for the future, and that's why we cherish this sector very much. We need to work very hard as a sector and also as a government to do our bit and to make sure this sector continues to flourish. There's 2 key elements that we're working on currently with partners like yourselves, like Bayer, like Nico, and other stakeholders in your company, and we very much appreciate your involvement also in this public-private domain. The 2 key developments are the development of a new horti-science vision as a municipality. So having chosen already as a municipality to be known and to profile ourselves as the home of horti-science, we need to make it happen every day. We need to make sure that we do deliver on providing education opportunities, on providing the right infrastructure, on providing housing to migrant workers, etc., etc., in order to live up to the expectation that we are indeed a good home of horti-science, that we enable companies like yourselves to flourish in this place. And working on that vision is not a task for the government alone. It's a task that we take up together with our key stakeholders, like yourselves, but also like Wageningen University, of which I'm, by the way, an alumnus, so I'm a bit prejudiced there. But with Wageningen, with Bayer, and with other producers and also NGOs, we work on this new vision and on the agenda. Now, the second key element that we're working on as a municipality is the development of the horti-science park. We know that innovation works in ecosystems, and ecosystems also have a geographic component. There's, of course, the Ruiter Experience Center, the Bayer ForwardFarm. There's also an experience center at Koppert, some other very interesting places in Lansingerland. They all link together There's already quite a good level of cooperation there, but we want to work on construing a new incubator together with the ecosystem. And we think it's important to locate that on the Hortic Science Park in Blijswijk. The long-term goal is not to have an incubator. The long-term goal is, of course, for Lansingerland and the Hortic Science Park to be a worldwide focal point for Hortic science innovation, and to be to make this the place to be for pioneers, for students, for research facilities, and innovative companies. Already, there's the largest vertical farm globally in Lansingerland. And already this is a magnet to, say, the Minister for Agriculture in China and in America to come to Blijswijk. They visited us and not Groningen. But we want to retain that position also for the future. Now, I want to close off by with the last topic, say really the role of government in stimulating innovation for sustainability. We think there's three elements to it. Firstly, creating the right conditions for innovations. The right conditions means we want to be attractive as a municipality for your workers at the Ruiter Experience Center. They need to be able to find a house here and an attractive living environment. But also a condition like the public infrastructure that's needed for the energy transition. A condition like right infrastructure. And of course, legislation and permits allowing this dynamic development to take place, and also protecting the environment, of course. So that's first element of our role as a government in stimulating innovation, setting those conditions. Secondly, we can be and we want to be the neutral platform for parties to convene on. Most importantly, in the Greenport West Holland community, which is a triple helix setup. We can be the platform to have discussions, to have the dialogue on sustainability challenges facing yourselves and facing others. And lastly, we stimulate also with funding fundamental research. We also lobby, of course, with the central government and European government. There's, for example, a member of the European Parliament visiting us in a couple of weeks. Lobby with them to allocate more budget to fundamental research. Because not everything can be funded by the private sector itself, but there's also a role for government to play. So that's, in brief, what I'd like to bring here today, the importance of the sector, the special place that the sector has already and can retain when it comes to delivering on the SDGs. And the way that we as a municipality try to facilitate all these developments, and most importantly, perhaps, we hope to have you as Bayer, as the Ruiter, through our activity and through our great cooperation. We hope to have you with us for the next 100 years as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan-Willem, for sharing these insights with us on the importance of sustainability for horticulture, and especially in the area of where you are active as alderman. I already wrote down a few interesting topics to discuss with you more during the panel discussion, and maybe also to interact with Jan de Ruiter, who just introduced the innovation topic. So that's for later on. And thank you also for addressing the fact that we already have an interesting conversation together. So with Bayer Crop Science, I think we will have more intensive and constructive discussions towards the future. But before we move into the panel discussion, we have a third topic to go, and that's the topic on health. And this health topic will be introduced by Laurens Sloot. Laurens is currently active as professor at the University of Groningen in the north of the Netherlands, where he's educating on entrepreneurship in retailing. So he's active in retail marketing. Apart from that, he's also head of the EFMI Business School for Food Professionals. And when I saw the title of his presentation, it really drew my interest. And I'm really curious what you will bring, Laurens, because you will speak with us about the importance of and the need of increased trust and collaboration along the entire value chain to make sure that we will have developments towards the future for more healthy concepts, food concepts, but also added value at the same time. So please, your insights, share your insights with us, and hopefully this will be an interesting kickoff for the health topic and afterwards we will move into the live discussion as mentioned. So the floor is yours, Laurens. Be welcome.
Thank you very much, Jos. My presentation will be partly on where the magic happens. So that's in supermarkets, and that's where the rubber meets the road and where consumers are confronted with fruit and vegetables, and how retailers can use certain trends such as health or sustainability to grow their business and to add value together with the suppliers in the whole food chain. A few years ago, I wrote a book about retail, especially about the disruption of hard discounters, and they grow quite fast, not only in Europe, also in the USA or in Australia, and they're a real challenge for full service retailers. It's not possible for me to control the slide, so maybe we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, if you just indicate the slide you want to go, Laurens, then we will do it for you. Thank you. Yeah, so this is participants who also watch Game of Thrones. They shall notice that this is Westeros, so the island with all the kingdoms. And in grocery retail, which is by far the largest retail market, it's about 30 to 40% of all retail purchases of consumers. There's a lot of competition. So in the middle, we have the kingdom of the full service retailers, such as Albert Heijn in the Netherlands, or Edeka in Germany, Kroger in the US, or Tesco in the UK. And they are challenged by many competitors who also want to have piece of the food share. So that those are food service players, such as, for example, McDonald's or the restaurants, the food specialty stores, such as the butchers or the cheese stores. We have the hard discounters, especially Aldi and Lidl in Europe, but also companies such as Dia or Biedronka from Poland. We have the online channel, which is growing quite fast. In the Netherlands, Picnic, in UK, Ocado. Picnic is also active in Germany, and they will start in France. We have, of course, Amazon Fresh, Peapod in the USA, such type of companies growing quite fast, especially during the COVID crisis. Then we have all kind of new concepts, which we call low-end non-food retail, such as Action, for example, in the Netherlands, but they also sell some fast-moving consumer goods. And then we have the last kingdom, and that's called the wall. And there is a question mark behind, because we're not sure about the new competition. Now, that can be Alibaba or Tencent or platform retail. Okay, next slide. And there is an important, can we go to the next slide? Yeah, there's an important quote in retail, and it says, "Retailing is the fine art of separating consumers from their money." And the way that it's done, that changes all the time. Sometimes consumers go for low prices, other times they go for quality. But in the end, the retailer who is doing this game the best will be the winner. Okay, next slide. My view on retail markets is that there are three important segments. We have a commodity segment, we have the mid-market segment, and we have the specialty segment. So just click on. And in most markets, if you ask consumers what they would like, then we find the wish line. And that's what people like. Next slide. And if you ask consumers what they like, it can be trends such as more organic food, or it should be produced local, or food with a higher convenience level, or which is produced in a sustainable way, or which is very healthy. That can change over time, but actually this is what consumers want. Next slide. But people want many things, but there's also another quote which says, "Poor people need low prices, but rich people love them." Yeah, so next slide. So that actually means that consumers are very demanding, but they cannot afford everything they want. So if you ask them what they want to pay, of course, the commodity price, and it's the wish to pay line. Yeah, next slide. And if you combine these lines together, you will find the regular bell curve. So that's the normal distribution. So we want to pay the commodity price. We want to have the high quality product, but we cannot afford that. So
most markets are a bit distributed like this. Next slide. So that means that in most markets, the mid segment is the largest segment. But then what's also important, if you take a look at what consumers can spend, is that most household incomes are, let's say, are not evenly distributed. So about 60 to 65% of all households, they have an average or a below average income. So that means that most households, they want a good product, but they look for, let's say, lower prices. Next slide. So if you take that into account and you look to the most retail markets, how the market is, let's say, distributed, you see that that the right part, so the specialty, the quality part, is smaller than the commodity part. Next slide. So in most markets, the mid-market is about 65 to 80% of the sales. So that's where let's say supply meets demand. Next slide. Sometimes people say, well, then you're stuck in the middle. But to be honest, to be stuck in the middle, it means that you focus on the largest segment in the market. Then what we also see from an economic perspective, then when a market matures, and the grocery market is mature because especially in Western Europe, the total population does not really increase, only about 0.2% per year. And what we see when markets mature, not the bell curve becomes dominant, but the well curve. Next slide. And the well curve is actually a sort of flipped bell curve. And what we see in mature markets is that that not the left and the right segment are the larger, but the growth potential is over there. So there's a lot of growth potential to the left and a lot of growth potential on the right. And normally newcomers in the market, they come from the left, let's say commodity players such as Aldi or Lidl, or from the right. That can be, let's say, high quality players, or that can be digital players. Next slide. So what do we see in several markets? For example, in the UK, there's a lot of pressure on the main players such as Sainsbury's, Morrison's, Tesco, Asda. They've lost a lot of market share, especially to Aldi and Lidl over the past 10 years. But also companies such as Waitrose, Co-op, and Ocado, they are doing very well on the right. And so there's pressure on the middle. Next slide. In Germany, we see about the same. There are Aldi, Lidl, and Kaufland. They almost have half of the market. And there's a lot of pressure on the mid-segments. Rewe and Edeka are two, let's say, surviving companies, but a lot of full-service retailers vanished. And on the right side, we have very good entrepreneurs, such as the Zurheide family and Hebers. They have 10 to 15 supermarkets, really big supermarkets, and they offer a lot of quality and specialty and regional products. And so the pressure also in Germany is in the middle segment. Next slide. Yeah, can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So what we see is on the left side, we have new entrants which are cheaper than, let's say, the big middle players such as Edeka, Tesco, Rewe, Carrefour. And on the right side, we have new entrants which are smarter, which are closer, let's say, to what people wish. So which actually supply what consumers want. Let's say organic or convenience or digital. Next slide. So there's a lot of pressure, let's say, on the mid segment. Now, and this trend, let's say that also digital becomes a large competitor in food retail, is fostered by COVID, of course. And we saw in the UK where the total online market in grocery retail was about 8%. It's doubled to 15-16% during the COVID period. Now, when the stores are or the lockdown disappeared in the UK, it's still about 13%. But in Holland, for example, the digital grocery segment was 3.6% before the crisis, and now it's about 7%, and it's growing quite fast. Next slide. Yeah, next slide. So what we see in these food retail markets, you can go back one, is that especially the growth potential is for e-commerce and for discounters, and that's what you see on the left. And actually, about 2/3 of the all growth potential is taken by e-commerce players and discounters. So for companies, for breeders, for example, who focus on markets which will grow, of course, the e-commerce players and the discounters will grow. But on the other hand, that's also what you see on the left side, is that the hypermarkets and the supermarkets still do half of all the turnover in FMCG markets. So these are still the big players, and they will stay big also in the long term. But the growth potential is at e-commerce and discounters. Yeah, next slide. So there's pressure on these service retailers, such as Tesco, Albert Heijn, Edeka. So they need, let's say, solutions. And I think food chains, dedicated food chains, exclusive food chains can help, especially when they can, let's say, take out costs out of the food chain or develop better products, which makes it easier for them to differentiate and to build added value. Next slide. And at EFMI, we developed, let's say, the EFMI food trends. In Dutch, it's the 4G model: gemak, goedkoop, gezondheid, and genieten. But in English, the most important food trends that really drive growth and added value are health, sustainability, convenience, and experience. And on all these dimensions, I think the Ruiter, Bayer, and its breeders can develop added value. It can be done by, let's say, producing easier, more organic, or that there is a higher yield for organic products, or that you develop a cucumber with a thicker, let's say, outside, that it dries not as fast as regular cucumbers, especially on the healthy part. There can be done a lot. One of the trends is that people want to eat ultra fresh. So that also means that supply chains have to be innovated. I think nutritional value will become more important. There will be more NGOs watching that. And in general, fruit and vegetables, I think, is one of the growing categories, especially because also, let's say, there is a trend that people want to eat less meat. Yeah, so these are the dimensions, I think, where the Ruiter can help their breeders, but also in the end, retailers to improve products and improve the position on the market. Yeah, last slide. And then I have some closing remarks. I think there are a lot of opportunities for in this segment. Why? Because the giants, the Carrefours of this world, are under pressure, but they will remain very large, at least for the next decade. But the fruit and vegetable category is what they call in retail a destination category. So most supermarkets start with fruit and vegetable. It's colorful. About 10 to 15% of all the turnover is in fruit and vegetables, about 20 to 25% of all the gross margins. So the margins are high. There is growth potential, especially because of the health and sustainability trend. It's part of the large shopping baskets, and all families will buy these products. So these are the families that all the retailers would like to have in their stores. And I think this category is perfect for the positioning of full service retailers, helping consumers make more healthy and sustainable choices. Last quote: sell them their herds. So if you want to help retailers, think about how they have to compete with other type of retailers, and how you can help them as a food chain, let's say, to be more distinctive from their competitors. So I think that cooperation, it can be exclusive cooperation, it can be dedicated cooperation together with the large full service retailers, offers a lot of opportunities for future growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurens, for sharing your insights with us. A very interesting presentation, I think. And I already see a connection with one of the questions that came in the chat for the live panel discussion, in which we are moving in now. Before we move into that, I'd like to thank all the three of you for giving this pitch on these three topics. Very clear and a very good kickoff, I guess, for the discussion. May I start maybe with you, Jan-Willem, to pick up on the aspect of sustainability. And while I'll point out a few questions to you, I give the ability to all the attendees to write down your questions in the chat and maybe look into how you are going to phrase them. And then we will use them to feed them into the discussion. Jan-Willem, you spoke a lot about innovation and sustainability, especially for horticulture and greenhouse in particular, also for the municipality where you are now active as local government. Many aspects has been mentioned by you, but I was wondering if you would have to call out one or the most pressing sustainability aspect or challenge of which you think that growers should work on today or keep on working for those who are already doing that. What kind of aspect would you then mention?
Yeah, thanks, Jos. Clear question, and I can add a lot of nuance to say it depends on this, depends on that. But I think all in all, the key thing is to move away from fossil energy as fast as possible. While I say that, I know and I acknowledge that doing that is not always easy, and there's a lot of dependency on especially regulation. Because fiscal choices made in The Hague by the central government have not worked in favor of moving away, getting rid of fossil the last couple of years. But good crop choices, good greenhouses, AI, all that sort of stuff can really help in a fantastic way. I was lucky enough to be involved in the autonomous greenhouse challenge last year, and I was really flabbergasted by the results there, because what I saw is that the teams, being Chinese teams, Delft teams, teams from all across the world, were able to beat the traditional tomato grower in terms of revenue per square meter by 50%, as I think I recall, while requiring only half of the energy input. So that's fantastic, what you can achieve using modern technology, so there are dependencies upon the public sector to improve regulation there, but there's also a lot that the sector can do itself. And I think that's the most urgent issue.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Maybe to stay with you for one additional question, and maybe that's partly related to the answer that you just gave, and that's about competitiveness. We see in the Netherlands that we are having greenhouse and indoor cropping on a very small area, quite capital intensive markets, looking at greenhouse infrastructure. Land that has to be rented or to be built, a lot of inputs. On the other hand, also a lot of pressure on to keep food production systems more sustainable. But on the other side, we also see in other parts of the world, for instance in China, emerging markets where a lot of investments are being done in agriculture and horticulture, so also in greenhouses, often supported and steered top down. My basic question here is, how do you see the role of Dutch growers from a profitability point of view, also with having the sustainability challenge to stay competitive, also with other parts of the world? Because we cannot only live from hortiscience, I guess, and from knowledge sharing, etc. Also, the enterprise that we have need to be run in a profitable way from a grower's perspective. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? Oh, you're muted, Jan-Willem.
Thanks. I muted myself. Very interesting question. I mentioned it, I think, in my pitch that the American Minister of Agriculture and the Chinese Minister of Agriculture, they visited recently Bleiswijk, and they did that for a reason, because we are really forerunners. You are forerunners and part of that group of forerunners when it comes to all these aspects of horticulture. So there is, I think, a fantastic opportunity that a lot of our entrepreneurs have already seen and also profit from, to export our knowledge, our materials, our seeds, our crop protection technologies, etc. So there's one, I think, a fantastic opportunity that's out there, and it's partly partly promoted and maybe facilitated even by strict sustainability regulation. Sustainability regulation is sometimes can hamper innovation, but I think in more cases it can and it does actually stimulate innovation. So the demanding environment here in Europe or in the Netherlands, I think, has not really been hampering the competitiveness of the sector so far. So one aspect, I think, of the global developments here is that the opportunity for companies based in the Netherlands and in Land is only getting better. The other element is indeed this is a very capital intensive sector, as you say. A nephew of mine went bankrupt a while ago with his very modern, innovative tomato glasshouse greenhouse in the north of the Netherlands. So I know this is tough. And we see, of course, a shift partly away from food crops to flowers in some areas of the Netherlands, partly because of the reasons that you mentioned. There's no solution that I can give from my position as an alderman. But what I do see is that good entrepreneurs like the one Paul Zandman operating the Ruiter Experience Center and like others as well in Land and wider, have each time, because there have been more challenging times over the last 150 years or so of horticulture in the Netherlands, have each time found ways to remain competitive, even though always energy has been expensive, land has been expensive, glass has been expensive. So based upon that experience, I have trust in their say competence to remain competitive, even though indeed there's price pressure, there's competition, etc.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Willem. There also came in an interesting question via the chat after having your presentation, but I think there's also a connection with the presentation as being shared by Laurens. And that's about the discussion we have in the Netherlands about how agriculture and horticulture should look like. So there is a certain group who strongly believes in innovation and connected to that in intensification for indoor and outdoor cropping. But there's also a certain group who thinks that we should go back in a more conservative way in the way we do agriculture and horticulture and move into extensification. Well, the last one will also, of course, will have an impact if that would be the direction, the overall direction on the prices that farmers need to make sure that they can have a profitable operation, which is also sustainable in the end. My question to you, Jan Willem, and also to Laurens would be, what should we do with these kind of directions that we have in the Netherlands? Should we search for a sort of integration, or should we have them both separate from each other? So from an innovation and sustainability point of view, and maybe for you, Laurens, what will this have on impact looking at the retail marketing side? Because it all ends up with the price in the end that the grower can have for his product to run a certain type of business. Thank you. Let me start with you, Jan Willem.
Thanks, Jos. I try to rephrase in my own ways. Practical purpose. You're saying, or you're asking, what my view on say those two ways of producing. Do we have to choose? Is that the way ahead?
Yeah, because that's the debate that is going on in the Netherlands. There are so-called two certain groups who have a different opinion, and there is a sort of polarization in that discussion.
Yeah, I got it. Thanks. There's also a political question, of course, or at least I can take it as a political question. I'm an alderman for a political party. The political party is called the CDA, the Christian Democrats, the sister party to the CDU, and that sort of stuff. And the debate is also affecting. It's very lively, and voters are going moving away partly from CDA to either a green party on the left or a right-wing party saying nitrogen. What's this debate? Never mind. Climate is a hoax. That sort of stuff. So the polarization also has political political aspect here. So that's why my answer is also partly political or personal. I don't believe, as a human being, as a person, also as a professional, I don't believe in separation. I don't believe in that we as humans or as entrepreneurs can at one point in time be either a fully dedicated commercial entrepreneur, not taking all these aspects on board that society demands, or at the other time saying, okay, I'm here the idealistic guy running this farm. It should work, but it doesn't work. Never mind. I mean, we are full persons. We are people with a lot of values that we don't leave behind as soon as we become entrepreneurs or we step into that role. And the same goes for me, for myself as an elder man. So that's why I don't think we need the lovely idealistic farming on the one hand and the real productive stuff on the other side. I think there is different ways of farming. There's different ways of horticulture. That has always been the case. It will always be the case. There's always a lot of cross innovation. So there's things that regular can learn from biological and the other way around, and that's fine. So I don't want to step in. I don't want to move and go with that polarization flow. I think that's a dead end road.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'll hand it over to you, Laurens. Do you have a view on that?
Well, I think I have a very pragmatic view. We know that the world population will grow at least until 2050. And it also means that the demand for meat products, but also for fruit and vegetables will grow. And so to save nature, it's I think our main job to produce even more efficient. That doesn't mean that that's the way I would like it to be, because I think we all favor biodiversity and free nature, but there's also another job to do, and I think that intensification can help spare land for real biodiversity and nature. That's on the one hand, and on the other hand, the pragmatic view is that if you produce less efficient, it means that product will go up in prices. And that also means that people have to pay a bit more for organic product, maybe 30-40%. But I think I also showed in my presentation that the market is not there, and that there is a demand for, let's say, lower priced products. So that's I think my opinion on that. And actually, I'm for 35 years a member of the same party of Jan Willem. And you see that even within that party, there is a lot of discussion about what should be the future of our horticulture, for example.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. There's a question coming in the chat, Laurens, and that relates to that regarding the margin levels in the chain and the earning model of the grower. So what you often see is that innovation drives a better food production in terms of yield and quality, and in the end, that often has an effect that prices go down, especially on the grower level. Margins stay on level along different parties within the chain, and prices for consumers, or they stay neutral, they stay the same, or they go down. And that is a real issue, in the sense that growers are willing to invest in their food production systems, also to make it more sustainable, but these investments cost money. So they need a decent price to be able to do these investments. My question to you would be, do you have an idea or an opinion how we could reach to a certain status where we share responsibility and ownership of making food production systems more sustainable along the entire value chain, instead of only putting the pressure and the challenge in the end, which is now happening today, often at the level of the grower?
Yeah, I don't agree with you. I think there's also a lot of pressure on the retailer itself, and that's the pressure coming from consumers who vote with their wallet. So if one retailer is more expensive than another and offers the same kind of products, they will lose market share. So these retailers are also under pressure. And to be honest, most retailers only have a net profit of lower than 2% of their turnover. So there's I think, pressure everywhere. That's on the one side. On the other side, I think retailers as well as consumers as well as suppliers want to improve the sustainability, and that sometimes means that products are produced a bit more expensive. And I think close cooperation in let's say closed or exclusive, dedicated or exclusive food chains can help, let's say, to demand a small premium. And I think that, for example, in the Netherlands, het Beter Leven systeem, so the Better Life system, which is used in food for pork and for chicken, is very, very successful in that respect. And so I think there are many ways that, let's say, breeders, for example, can work together with processors and food retailers to be able to get the premium needed. But I also want to be honest, a premium of 30% or in that area won't be possible. It's an open market, and in the end, consumers vote with their wallet and their feet, so where they go to.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Maybe an additional question, and that's an interesting one that also just came in, also for you, Laurens. Do you think there is a role for the government, for instance, in an area of changing things in competition law, or making it mandatory that there should be some sort of grower subsidy paid by, not by the government, but by different parties active in the value chain to make sure that the grower in the end remains getting, as said, a decent price to be able to continuously invest in his food production systems? Do you see there any role for the government to interact?
Well, in the end, many of the stuff we produce, for example, tomatoes or cucumbers or broccolis, are more or less a commodity. And in commodity markets, it means that if there is overcapacity, the price will go down, and if there is undercapacity, the price will go up. So all these subsidies sometimes lead to extra production, which makes it even more difficult to demand the right price. And it leads to strange situations. For example, that a liter of milk is priced in Holland about €1, but a liter of Coca-Cola is about €2. Well, it's totally obvious that it's much more complex to produce a liter of milk than a liter of cola. But it has to do with branding, it has to do with scarcity. So I'm not so much in favor of subsidies because in the end, it often works the other way around.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Maybe we should take a question as well from the financing side, because I think there are also a few participants who are really active in the financing world, because I just received an interesting questions around changing in financing rules. So Basel III is being mentioned. I'm pretty much sure that the details will be with you, Jan. And the question is, since banks like ABN AMRO and other premier banks who are really supporting innovation and supporting entrepreneurial farmers, do they have still the ability in the near future to finance growers who want to innovate, who want to be entrepreneurial, with new financial rules coming in, like, for instance, Basel III? Do you have an opinion about that for those who are interested in that question? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of media attention for it's actually Basel IV. So it's changed from today it's Basel III, the regulations for banks, and it will be Basel IV within the near future. And one of the things is that agricultural land will be less important in financing, and there will be more attention for revenues and also the more sustainable revenues in the future. So the prediction of the revenues would be very more important instead of financing on collateral like buildings and agricultural land. So yeah, that's one of the issues we mentioned within the government and within the EU. But we were always we were always able to be a part in the new investments or new innovations in the agricultural sector in the past. So I think we will find a way to do that. But we always we not present at the start mostly. When there is a startup with new innovation, we always want to have a little bit of proved technology. So there will always be with the speeding innovation, we will step in always a little bit later than for instance private equity or incubators or other people who will invest at the first when some people have an idea in new investments.
Okay, thanks for elaborating more on that. I think that's pretty much clear. Maybe another question related to the entrepreneurship, where ABN AMRO and you in your role are focusing on in particular. Have you seen any significant changes? And if yes, what are a few of these changes in the way that entrepreneurial farmers have changed things in how they manage their greenhouse operations and their cropping systems? Have you seen some involvement over the last couple of years, and which are those involvements?
Yeah, certainly. We always saw there was a lot of innovation on the technical side, like new glasshouse techniques, growing systems, different glasshouses. But the last couple of years, we see a lot of innovation on energy and the sustainability side. But I think more important, and also what Lawrence was mentioned, in the relationship with their buyers. So we come from a situation with auctions, and people have to put brought their products to the auction, and then they have to just sit back and watch what the price will be and where the products will go. And we see with the entrepreneurial growers that they have strong relationships, that they're involved in their sales of the products, that they know what's going on. They want to be on the table with those parties and have the discussions and prove what their added value is. And they are growing more products with added value. And what Lawrence mentioned about the commodities, it's quite hard for me to call a tomato a commodity. Commodities, I think of grains or soy within harbors shipped with large grain. So I still think it's quite a healthy, good product with taste, with the presentation and everything. So that's quite important to have a special variety with another taste or another purpose, just to tell the retail or your buyer what it could be and what could be the added value for the customer. And I think that's an important change the last years we saw. And that's the same thing with telling the story, and not only telling the story, but showing what you're doing. So there's more transparency. They measure everything in the glass house with the use of chemicals, the use of fertilizers, the use of energy. So they have quite a good story to tell to the consumers, but also to all the parties in the chain. And I think that changed a bit, and there's a lot of work to do still, but there are quite great opportunities to have a different product, and because there are a lot of different retailers in the market, they don't want to copy the product of the other party, so there is some space for differentiation and added value, I guess.
Okay, well, thanks. That's pretty much clear, Jan. Maybe a question for you, Jan Willem, and that's a question pointed out to you, but it goes about Bayer Crop Science and Bayer Vegetable Seeds in particular. Do you think we should issue more information about sustainability in relation to the things we develop and we put into the market from the Bayer Vegetable Seeds perspective to local citizens? So should we do more in sharing information starting, let's say, bottom up? Do you have an opinion about that?
Yeah, thanks, Jos. Great question. Yes, I'm very outspoken on that. I think you, but also others, want to do much more on consumer communication. I mean, I don't say that from a, of course, from a company profitability perspective. It's not my job to look into that. But from the perspective of a very big concern that I have, is that as a cause of caused by developments in the value chain that Laurens Sloten spoke about, and by say the increasing professionalization of food production, there is a large distance now between consumers and producers, and that's worrying me, because that leads to a couple of things. One, that there's too little interest of talented young people to work in this sector, whether in seed production or in primary production or in greenhouse construction or whatever. So there's too little talent flowing into this sector, and that's partly due to its the fact that it's unknown relatively. Used to be very visible, by the way, practically speaking, in Lansingerland, but nowadays with all these new quarters being built, it's hardly visible if you travel around the municipality. So you want to do more in terms of consumer communication for that reason, but also because if you don't communicate and other professional players don't communicate, the debate is being captured, can be hijacked by again the polarized people out there that we spoke about earlier. That's then an uphill battle once they've set the frames. So a couple of reasons why I think indeed we want more visibility from your side, but also from the side of other key players in the sector when it comes to consumer communication.
Okay, thank you. Laurens or Jan, do you like to comment on that? Because you may have a different opinion or the same opinion on the question as raised. So what should be our role in communication, information sharing with citizens as Bayer Crop Science?
Well, I can comment on that. Of course, we all have to work to make products and food chains more sustainable. But that doesn't mean that we can all communicate that to consumers. And the more we communicate, sometimes the less they will receive. And I think that's the strong things of brands such as Coca-Cola. In the brand communication, a brand is a whole association, a whole network of associations. And I think when it comes to fresh products, there are not many brands. And that means that you have to communicate a lot to tell the consumer. So I'm not sure. So yes, you have to improve. Will you be able to tell it all to consumers that it lands? It's questionable.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to comment too on this item. What we see is that there's also a difference between the ratio and the emotions. What Jan Willem mentioned about the distance between the food producers and the consumers, that's there. But when you try to send out a message, we talked about smaller farms, more extensive instead of high-tech intensive farms. Then there is a big lack of knowledge. But when you try to bridge that knowledge with rational information, with all kind of details about sustainability, I think people don't get it. And a lot of people have a romantic view on farming, and they want that romantic view back. So that's quite hard to have a lot of technical knowledge and transparency and more sustainable information to communicate with. We're in a private public participation with Wageningen University, with BioNext. It's called the honest and real price of food. De echte en eerlijke prijs van voedsel. And we did some calculations on the true price of biological products and regular products, and there's actually no difference. because we have the whole range of biodiversity, we have land use and all that kind of stuff. And then you see, because there is less production on the biological side and a higher production on the high-tech farms, then that levels up. So that's quite hard to have a good communication about that, because even Frans Timmermans from the Farm to Fork said we want biological, but biological use more land, and then there is less space for nature. So it's quite a hard discussion.
Yep.
For what do the best, but I think there will be a mix, and we must communicate and try to tell the people how it really is, but also the discussion is captured by a small group of people who want to have that romantic view on food production.
Okay, thanks, Jan. An additional question came in for you, Laurens, and that's about traceability and about track and trace systems, also in relation to produced food. And the question is traceability and track and trace systems, are that something that we simply should have, looking at responsibility that we have to the final consumer, or could it be used also as a real marketing asset? Do you have a view on that?
I think that retailers in the future will demand it, because you have to be able to go back in the chain, for example, for food safety reasons. That doesn't mean that it's easy to get a premium for that. Also, I think it's part of being in business. Tracking and tracing can add value, but then if you take a more, let's say, personal approach, so that there is a picture of the farmer on the package, or that you can use a Q8 code and that you can read more about the family who produced it, so that you make it personal. That's one comment. I also want to come back to another thing I said. Maybe I was misquoted, but I talked about tomatoes as a commodity. In marketing terms, that means that if every retailer offers the same kind of tomato, even if it's a high quality tomato, it's perceived as a commodity from the consumer perspective, and not a commodity as wheat, for example. And that relates also to a question I think in the chat. Of course, you have to focus on the mid-market, because that's the big market, and that's where the main volumes will go. But that doesn't mean you have to produce an average type of quality product. It's like in athletics, if you want to stay in front, you have to improve each year, because the competition is also improving. So innovations, and it can be product-related innovations or chain-related innovations or tracking and trade-related innovations, that will go on and go on and go on, because even the mid-market wants the best products, but they cannot afford it. But after a while, production will become cheaper and people can afford it. So always drive for innovation, but retailers will copy each other, and then it will commoditize.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Maybe one of the last questions, I guess, and this question I would like to point out to all the three of you, and that's also to summarize it a little bit. Because we spoke intensively about innovation and about sustainability, which is closely connected. Many of us are convinced of the fact that we need innovation to have better food production systems in terms of the amount of food and quality of food for the rising world population on one side, but we also have the pressure on moving into more sustainability in food production systems on the other side. And if we then speak about innovation, we need new technologies in all kinds of areas. For instance, breeding technologies. We are in a continuous debate or dialogue, so to say, with society, in some areas more intensive than in other areas, where there are some concerns or criticism about new technologies which are in place or which are bound to be introduced, especially, for instance, in seed breeding. If we are convinced of the fact that new technologies we really need to meet the challenge that we are ahead of, and having the concerns and skepticism on the other side, what could we do or should we do to address this skepticism? Because that is an issue and that is among society. Could you elaborate, all the three of you, from the discipline where you are expert in, on this basic question which just came in via the chat? Thank you. Starting with you, Jan Willem, maybe. Sorry, you're muted.
Not a problem. Thanks. I'm not an expert in CRISPR-Cas or that sort of stuff. But of course, already when I was a student in Wageningen, there was a lively debate on these sorts of issues. And what I've learned over the years, also during my time at PwC, is that the best thing you can do as a company or as a sector faced with societal challenges is sharing dilemmas. So we just spoke about communication, also about the difficulties of communication with consumers, citizens, and what have you. But sharing the dilemma is, I think, always a no regret option. And the dilemma, as was set out to me when I visited your experience center, had a very clear outcome. To me, also as a citizen, as a consumer, namely that the technologies that were then explained to me deliver a very good outcome in a shorter period of time without any negative side effects that cannot be afforded. So I was convinced, and of course I'm not the average citizen. But still, I think sharing the dilemmas, being very open, as you have been as a company always. There's other companies out there also in your sphere that have been less, that have less of a reputation as being open and transparent. So continue that legacy. I would say we can play a role as well, perhaps as a government, as a platform for that sort of debate. I think there's an outcome with a substantial satisfactory societal draagvlak, how you say this, carrying power going forward. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Jan Willem. Laurens, can I hand it over to you?
Well, I think as a sector, you should be proud on innovations and also on the way these innovations are made. That doesn't mean that it's always, let's say, an easy job to communicate that to all kind of consumers and NGOs who have different opinions. But I would say stand for your business.
Okay, thanks. Jan, some closing remark from your side on this question?
Yeah, we see it's back on the political agenda in the EU at this time, and it's quite hard to have that discussion in the open because there is a lot of different people's opinions, and what we see is that there is a very big challenge for all of us within the battle for food and feed and fibers and fuels and housing. So we need extra technologies, breeding technologies also to compete with all those challenges. And one of the things I mentioned a couple of years ago was maybe, for instance, breeders could have some double goal crops. For instance, the tomatoes behind you, Jos, we have great fruits, but they also have the stems. And when you have another way of breeding and get the stems more useful for other plant-based and bio-based products, then that's also a great achievement for humanity. So I think we need new techniques, and we need them quite faster, because the challenges are on us. And when we want to have less fossil fuel dependent, we need a lot of plant-based, bio-based products instead. So we need a very high, we have very big challenges for food, but also on the other side. So within crop breeding, I think we need a big discussion within Europe to have also new techniques available, just on the food production side, but also on the bio-based side.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for elaborating also on this question. And with that, I see that we are already a few minutes ahead of the closing time, as mentioned yesterday in the program, which was 11:45. And of course, we want to respect your time, as many of you are still during the day or already at the early start of the evening. So with that, we are going to a closing of this global webcast. We have tried to address most of the questions which came into the chat. Questions that remain, we will see if we can get some answers to you via a Q&A. Some other closing remarks. Of course, we would like to host you in the Ruiter Experience Center in the Netherlands, but we are still in a pandemic situation. We can have visits on a one-to-one basis, fully COVID-proof. And if you are willing to do so and are interested to come over to the Experience Center, you can make an appointment via our website. But we also offer, and that is what we have learned to be also creative during this COVID period, to offer virtual tours already, which you can simply enter via our website as well. And that is the website www.theruiterseeds.com. If you want to learn more about the Bayer ForwardFarming initiative and what we aim to do, and what we also practically do on all our Bayer Forward farms as currently running, and the next one to come up together with the Ruiter Experience Center under glass, visit the website www.bayerforwardfarming.com. I would like to thank, first of all the presenters before and after the break for the presentations, and especially Laurens, Jan-Willem, and Jan for your lively contribution to the panel discussion, which to me was very interesting and worthwhile, hopefully also for you spending your time. Thanks for that. Also, many thanks for all the attendees who were around 2.5 to 3 hours with us in this global webcast. And hopefully we will meet you again at one of the other occasions. For now, I would like to thank you all, close this webcast, and stop with the remaining words. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you for participating. Bye-bye.